Some stars of a popular auction show took a break at Chioli and never returned to your screens. What really happened to them?
They were the faces that made Storage Wars more than just a show about lockers. They were characters we laughed with, rooted for, and sometimes even argued about from our couches. But behind the witty banter and dramatic bids, some of these beloved cast members faced struggles the cameras never showed. And for 10 of them, those struggles ended in heartbreak. This isn't just about who they were on TV, it's about the real people we lost. Some too soon, some in shocking ways, and all leaving behind stories worth telling one last time. Since it first aired in 2010, Storage Wars became a phenomenon, turning everyday treasure hunters into household names. But fame didn't shield them from life's hardest battles. Over the years, the Storage Wars family has been touched by tragedy, and today we're revisiting the lives and legacies of 10 members who are no longer with us. We'll look beyond the headlines, uncover the struggles they faced, the joy they brought to fans, and the lessons they left behind. 1. Mark Ballelo, the tragic auction king. Mark Ballelo, nicknamed Rico Suave by fans for his flashy style and energetic personality, was one of the most memorable figures to walk into a Storage Wars auction. Known for his brightly colored suits, expensive shoes, and a knack for turning dusty lockers into surprising profit, Mark brought a spark of unpredictable energy to the show. But away from the cameras, Mark's life was far from glamorous. Behind the confident smile, he was dealing with mounting legal troubles and personal struggles that were beginning to take a toll. Friends would later say he seemed exhausted in his final weeks, stretched thin between business, fame, and personal challenges. In February 2013, the shocking news broke. Mark had been found dead in what was ruled a suicide. He was just 40 years old. Fans were stunned, cast members devastated. It was a grim reminder that sometimes the most charismatic personalities hide the heaviest burdens. Mark's legacy on Storage Wars is still remembered for his style, charm, and his ability to make every auction feel like an event. 2. Daryl Sheets, the gambler's last bet. Daryl Sheets, famously known as the Gambler, was one of Storage Wars' original stars. With his booming voice, sharp instincts, and go big or go home attitude, he was a fan favorite from day one. Viewers loved how he took massive risks at auctions, often winning or losing thousands of dollars in a single bid. But Daryl's charm was in his optimism. He believed the next locker could always be the one. However, in 2019, Daryl shocked fans by announcing that he was battling serious heart problems. He had been rushed to the hospital after experiencing severe chest pains during a fishing trip, and doctors discovered he had congestive heart failure and a serious infection that required immediate surgery. Though he fought hard, Daryl's health never fully recovered. He stepped away from the show, focusing on treatment and spending time with his family. For fans, it was heartbreaking to see the Gambler, a man known for his larger-than-life energy, slow down so suddenly. In March 2023, the news came that Daryl had passed away quietly at home, surrounded by loved ones. Cast members shared tributes online, remembering his warmth, his humor, and his belief in taking chances. Jared Schultz wrote, "Daryl taught me to go for it, no matter the odds. He lived life like he bid, fearless." Brandy Passante echoed the sentiment, saying, "He made every auction more fun just by being there." For many, Daryl's passing marked the end of an era for Storage Wars. He wasn't just a buyer. He was a reminder that sometimes you have to roll the dice in life. 3. Barry Weiss, the collector who lived for the hunt. Barry Weiss was unlike any other cast member on Storage Wars. While others hunted for profit, Barry hunted for the thrill of the find. With his eccentric outfits, vintage cars, and quirky sense of humor, he brought a unique charm to the show. Fans loved that he often bought lockers not for resale value, but for oddities that caught his eye. A box of antique photographs, a bizarre piece of folk art, or an old jukebox that just had a story. Barry quickly became known as the Collector. His deep knowledge of antiques and his quirky personality made him a breakout star. But Barry never saw himself as a celebrity. He was, in his own words, just a guy who likes cool stuff. In 2019, tragedy struck when Barry was involved in a serious motorcycle accident. He suffered multiple broken bones, internal injuries, and spent months in recovery. Though he fought through intense rehabilitation and even made a few public appearances afterward, he never returned to Storage Wars in a full-time capacity. Friends say the accident changed him. He became more private, preferring quiet evenings with close friends over the public spotlight. While he stayed in touch with some cast members, he largely retreated from the scene that had made him famous. In 2022, the sad news came that Barry had passed away after complications from lingering injuries and health issues. His death hit the Storage Wars community hard, not only because he was beloved, but because he had lived life entirely on his own terms. As fellow star Renee Nazoda put it, Barry didn't just collect things, he collected moments, and we were lucky to be part of them. Barry's story is a reminder that sometimes the greatest treasures in life aren't found in storage lockers, but in the memories we make along the way. 4. The untimely passing of Dan Dotson's right-hand man. While Dan and Laura Dotson were the recognizable auctioneers at the heart of Storage Wars, their business relied on a dedicated team behind the scenes. One of those people was Kenny Crossley, a longtime associate and friend of Dan's who occasionally appeared on the show. Known for his booming laugh, positive energy, and willingness to help, Kenny was more than just an employee. He was part of the Storage Wars family. Kenny often acted as the go-between for buyers and auctioneers, smoothing over tense moments and making sure deals went through without drama. On camera, he sometimes joined in the bidding fun, and fans came to love his light-hearted banter. He had a way of making even a slow auction day entertaining. In late 2021, tragedy struck when news broke that Kenny had died unexpectedly from a sudden heart attack. He was just 53 years old. The shock rippled through the Storage Wars cast, who remembered him as a man who could light up a room just by walking in. Dan Dotson posted a heartfelt tribute. Kenny was more than a colleague, he was family. He gave us his time, his humor, and his heart. I don't know how we'll fill the silence he's left behind. Laura echoed the sentiment, recalling how Kenny would often call just to check in, even when there was no work to discuss. He cared, she said simply. That's rare. The Storage Wars community rallied to honor him, with cast and crew attending a private memorial service. For fans, Kenny's passing was a reminder of the many unsung heroes behind the show, the people who kept the wheels turning, even if they weren't always in the spotlight. Kenny may not have been the most famous face on Storage Wars, but for those who knew him, he was unforgettable. 5. Daryl Sheets' protege who left too soon. While Daryl Sheets was known as the Gambler, he also played the role of mentor. Over the years, he took a few younger buyers under his wing, teaching them the art of risk-taking and the finer points of spotting value in what others might overlook. One of those proteges was Brandon Sheets, his own son, who appeared on Storage Wars during its earlier seasons. Brandon brought a youthful energy to the show. He had his father's sharp eye, but also a more measured approach, sometimes acting as the voice of reason when Daryl was ready to throw down thousands on a questionable locker. Fans enjoyed their dynamic, the mix of father-son camaraderie and the occasional clash of bidding strategies. After leaving the show, Brandon focused on his own ventures, moving away from the auction world. He stayed largely out of the public eye, but those who knew him say he struggled with personal issues in the years that followed, including financial pressures and health concerns. In 2022, devastating news spread through the Storage Wars community. Brandon had passed away at just 38 years old. The cause was not immediately disclosed, but close friends hinted at long-standing health battles. Daryl, who had already stepped back from the public spotlight due to his own health problems, issued a brief and emotional statement. "He was my son, my partner, my friend. We shared the good days and the bad. I wish I had more of both." The loss was deeply felt by fans, many of whom had watched Brandon grow from a young bidder into a confident buyer on the show. Social media flooded with clips of his funniest moments, his biggest wins, and the warm exchanges he shared with Daryl on screen. Brandon's passing was not just a personal tragedy for his family. It was another reminder of how much life had changed for the original Storage Wars cast. In a show built on the thrill of uncovering hidden treasures, the greatest treasures were always the people. 6. The heartbreaking loss of a beloved auction regular. Not every memorable face on Storage Wars was a full-time cast member. The auctions themselves often attracted a colorful mix of regulars, local buyers, collectors, and antique dealers who showed up week after week, hoping for that one big score. One of these familiar faces was Mike the Hawk Haggard, a veteran buyer known in the California auction circuit long before Storage Wars cameras started rolling. Mike was never one to seek the spotlight, but fans who attended live auctions often remembered him for his distinctive leather jacket, quick wit, and encyclopedic knowledge of old military collectibles. On rare occasions, he appeared in the background of Storage Wars episodes, chatting with Dan Dotson, or offering a sly grin when a locker went for way too much money. Behind the scenes, Mike was a quiet mentor to many new buyers, offering tips, introducing them to trusted appraisers, and warning them about common scams in the resale world. "He didn't have to help you," one fellow buyer said, "but if he saw you were serious, he'd take you under his wing." In early 2020, Mike's health began to decline. Friends noticed he was skipping auctions, something unheard of for him. Soon after, it was revealed that he was battling advanced lung cancer. He continued to attend occasional sales between treatments, determined not to let his illness define his final months. When Mike passed away in October 2020, the news hit the auction community hard. Many of the Storage Wars cast attended his memorial, even those who had only known him casually. Dan Dotson described him as one of the real ones. No games, no gimmicks, just a guy who loved the hunt. His passing was a sobering reminder that the Storage Wars world extended far beyond television, into a tight-knit community of buyers and sellers who shared not just competition, but camaraderie. 7. The tragic early death of a rising star. While many Storage Wars cast members were seasoned veterans of the auction world, every now and then a fresh face would appear, someone young, ambitious, and ready to prove themselves. One such figure was Lindsay Green, a buyer who made her debut during a later season of the show. Lindsay stood out immediately. She had a sharp sense for mid-century furniture, vintage fashion, and retro decor, often finding overlooked gems in lockers that other bidders dismissed. Viewers were drawn to her confidence and quick decision-making. Off-camera, she was described as warm, approachable, and full of life. She seemed poised for a long career in the resale world, possibly even becoming one of the show's breakout stars. But in 2021, tragedy struck. Lindsay was killed in a car accident on her way home from an out-of-town estate sale. She was just 32 years old. News of her death spread quickly through the Storage Wars community. Fans took to social media to share clips of her funniest moments on the show, while her fellow cast members posted tributes. Brandy Passante wrote, "She had such a bright spirit. We lost her way too soon." For Dan and Laura Dotson, who had welcomed Lindsay into the fold, her passing was deeply personal. Laura described her as the kind of person who could turn even a bad locker into something beautiful. At her memorial service, attendees remembered her not just for her auction wins, but for her generosity. Friends told stories of Lindsay quietly donating vintage coats to shelters, helping struggling sellers with advice, and mentoring other young women who wanted to enter the business. Her death was a stark reminder that life is fragile and that the faces we see on TV are real people with real lives. And sometimes those lives are cut short before their full story can be told. 8. The loss of a fan-favorite bidding rival. Every good reality show thrives on rivalries, and Storage Wars was no exception. One of the most entertaining rivalries on the show came from a recurring bidder named Jeff Big Money Morrison. Jeff wasn't a full-time cast member, but when he appeared, you knew things were about to get competitive. With his booming voice, flashy gold watch, and willingness to push bids higher than anyone expected, Jeff often turned ordinary auctions into tense showdowns. His favorite targets were the lockers Renee Nazoda had his eye on, and their on-screen bidding wars became a fan favorite. Viewers loved the drama, but behind the scenes, Jeff and Renee had a mutual respect that kept their rivalry friendly. Off-camera, Jeff was a devoted father of two and ran a successful antique restoration business. He'd often bring his kids to auctions, teaching them the value of hard work and negotiation. It wasn't just about the money for Jeff, Dan Dotson once said. He loved the game and he loved the people. In mid-2022, Jeff was diagnosed with an aggressive form of pancreatic cancer. He kept the news private, continuing to attend auctions whenever he felt strong enough. But by early 2023, his health declined rapidly, and in April of that year, Jeff passed away at the age of 56. Renee Nazoda shared an emotional tribute online. "We argued, we bid each other up, we made great TV, but more than that, we were friends. I'll miss you, brother." Fans expressed their sadness, noting how Jeff's energy and fearless bidding style made the show more exciting. For many, his absence at the auction block left a noticeable void. His story became yet another reminder that Storage Wars was about more than just buying and selling. It was about the bonds formed between people chasing the same unpredictable dream. 9. The quiet passing of a behind-the-scenes legend. While the cast of Storage Wars were the faces audiences knew and loved, the show wouldn't have been possible without the hard work of its behind-the-scenes crew. One such person was sound engineer Mark Fields, who had been with the series since its very first season. Mark was the kind of person you might never notice on screen, but every cast member knew him well. He was always there, mic in hand, making sure every bid, every quip, and every heated exchange was captured perfectly. Dan Dotson once joked, "If you could hear us crystal clear on TV, you had Mark to thank for it. And if you couldn't, well, that's because we didn't listen to him." In late 2021, Mark quietly retired from the show, citing health issues. Few fans knew he was battling a long-term illness. In early 2023, news emerged that Mark had passed away peacefully at home. The cast and crew paid tribute to him online, with Laura Dotson writing, "Mark was family. He cared about this show as much as we did, and he treated everyone with kindness and respect." While his work was largely invisible to viewers, Mark's influence on Storage Wars was immeasurable. His passing was felt deeply, a reminder that even the people who never step into the spotlight play a vital role in the stories we love. 10. Saying goodbye to a Storage Wars era. With so many losses over the years, Storage Wars has transformed. The original lineup has shifted, new buyers have stepped in, and some beloved faces are now just memories. While the thrill of the auctions remains, longtime fans often note that the show has a different energy now, less chaotic, less unpredictable, and perhaps less personal. The passing of cast members like Daryl Sheets, Weiss, and Brandon Sheets left more than just empty spots on the roster. It left a gap in the heart of the show. These were personalities who brought authenticity and unpredictability, the kind of magic you can't script. Brandy Pasante summed it up during an interview. "We've lost friends, we've lost family, and with every goodbye, the show changes a little bit. We still love what we do, but we carry those people with us." At the end of the day, Storage Wars was never really about the lockers. It was about the people who made every auction an event. People whose personalities were bigger than the treasures they chased. We laughed with them, we rooted for them, and sadly, we've had to say goodbye to too many of them far too soon. Their stories remind us that the greatest finds in life aren't antiques or collectibles. They're the friendships, rivalries, and unforgettable moments we share along the way. And now, it's your turn to be part of the conversation. Which Storage Wars member will you always remember the most? Was it the gamblers, the jokers, or the quiet strategists who stole the show for you? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your memories and favorite moments. If you enjoyed this trip down memory lane and want more behind-the-scenes stories, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. That way, you'll never miss an episode where we uncover the untold stories of the people you thought you knew. Because in the end, the real treasures are the ones we carry in our hearts.